Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. You don't need me to tell you that Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou is just around the corner. So I guess it's time to do a preview and prediction video. But in all honesty, what is there to say? I mean, I can't tell you, unless you are new to boxing, anything about AJ. Because you cannot have a more high-profile fighter. So you all know his record, two-time unified heavyweight champ. I suppose for the benefit of this video, let's just concentrate on the last year of his career, because last year, 2023, was his comeback year. He lost twice back-to-back against Usyk. I don't think there's any shame in that, because Usyk is a brilliant, brilliant fighter. And AJ went 24 rounds. I mean, he almost got stopped in the last round of the first fight when he was absolutely shattered at the end. He could barely get off his stool. Just as well, that was the last round. If that had been an old 15-rounder, Usyk, I think it's almost certain, would have knocked him flat. But he survived, and he did the full 24 rounds over two fights, and there's no shame in that. But he did have that little meltdown in the ring at the end of the second fight, and it seemed that his mentally, psychologically, he was shattered or exhausted, just exhausted, because he walked around the ring, chucked the belts out the ring, had the mic, took it away from Usyk, the victory away from Usyk, so it took away the plaudits, if you like, of being beaten twice, of Usyk beating him the second time. And the second fight was slightly closer. So, all respect to Usyk, an absolute road warrior, Usyk. What was it? Second fight was in Saudi, first fight was in Britain. I mean, Usyk is just an astonishing talent who travelled to the world, beating people up in their own backyards. But, hey, despite that, he went 24 rounds. But the question mark was over his psyche. And he hooks up with Derek James, has a couple of fights with him, Jermaine Franklin, and then there was that sort of farce with Dillian White pulling out, having to pull out because he failed a drugs test. In comes Robert Helenius, who'd only fought a week earlier in some school gymnasium against some nondescript opponent. He comes in suddenly. He goes from that to being on a major card. Does better than people think. Joshua eventually knocks him out, but if you see the state of Joshua's face at the end of that fight, his nose was blooded. He had blood coming out of his mouth, some minor swellings on his face. He'd been in a fight, but he was a picturesque highlight reel knockout of Helenius eventually, but there were still question marks. And then at the end of the year, he hooks up with Ben Davison and fights Otto Wallin, who'd given Tyson Fury all sorts of problems, bad cut over Fury's eye, a few rows of stitches. Yeah, it weren't pretty, was it? But Fury got the win. Now, against AJ, Wallin was not remotely competitive. Joshua just beat him up, and he ended up being pulled out by his corner, which is fair enough. Was it Joey Gamache is in his corner? I remember Joey Gamache, two-weight belt holder. Not a great fighter, but okay, decent. Probably best known for being, horrendously knocked out by Arturo Gatti. But anyway, he was in his corner. He pulls Wallin out, rightly so. And from that point on, the hookup with Ben Davison, it seems to me, it was like Joshua has turned a corner. Now, I know he's only had one fight, which is the Wallin fight with Ben Davison. But sometimes it's how you get your work done, and sometimes it's your overall demeanour. And I think those first two fights in 2023, there was still a case of Joshua, still an air of Joshua sort of looking for his own identity, trying to rediscover something, trying to work out, what am I? What am I doing? What's my style? How do those defeats fit into my overall story? Do I learn from them? Do I, what's going on here? It wasn't meant to be like this. Suddenly I'm on the back foot and I'm questioning everything and I'm second guessing things. In his interviews, all this stuff came across very vividly with Joshua. But with Ben Davison, who is a very cerebral trainer, he's a guy who He likes to break things down. He's very, very analytical. I always thought this might suit Joshua, but I didn't think they'd get together because Davison had previously trained Fury. And I suppose, with the benefit of hindsight, that might be the reason why, one of the reasons why Davison likes training Joshua, because he was let go by Fury, so he goes over to the, to use the modern vernacular, the other side of the street, and he's training Joshua. And it seems to be paying dividends because, again, only one fight, the fight against Wallin, but the way Joshua is coming across, the things he's saying, there seems to be an edge to him. There seems to be a serious sort of, almost a bit of nastiness to him, which we saw way back when he fought Dillian White, when Dillian was undefeated and he ended up getting knocked flat. But I like that with Joshua. It seems that finally the planets have aligned in his mind and he can suddenly see clearly and he thinks, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to second guess myself. This is what it's all about. And the Ben Davison link up seems to be, it's early days, but it seems to be fitting. It seems to be a good fit. So I'm very curious to see how he deals with Ngannou, how he fights, what his style is going to be. Is he going to be very aggressive? Is he going to back off and box on the back foot? It won't be a case of like the second Andy Ruiz fight, even though Joshua won that, I'm almost tempted to say it was a hollow victory because he moved so much and he gave the impression of running. And for some of the fight, he was running. He wasn't boxing on the back foot. He was moving way too much. But he did win the fight legitimately because Ruiz came in at 19 stone or whatever it was and was never in shape anyway and kind of sabotaged his own title reign by, eating too many pizzas or whatever. Which brings us to Francis Ngannou, who is, the polar opposite of someone like Ruiz. I mean, Ngannou is a very fit, immensely strong, physically strong, immensely physically strong fighter. He's in combat sports. He has had some boxing training. I think when he first moved to France, he initially went into boxing and then moved over to MMA. I knew just about nothing about him before he fought Fury. I watched drips and drabs on YouTube. I don't dislike MMA or UFC. I just don't really watch it a lot. I'm a pure casual, but I'd read all about Ngannou and I thought, okay, yeah, fair enough. This guy's he's got a history of being in combat sports, a little bit of basic boxing knowledge. But of course, Fury will just toy with him. And we know what happened. Anything but that happened. Ngannou was completely revelatory, a complete revelation in that ring. He boxed Fury. This is the most astonishing thing. He was jabbing. He was, trying to use technique. I am not someone who believes he won that fight. I think Fury very clearly won the fight by, well, I say clearly, a couple of points. Because you take out the knockdown, after, I suppose, the fourth round, Ngannou was barely throwing any punches. Certainly in the second half of the fight, he slowed right down. And why wouldn't he? That was his debut as a professional boxer, and he's fighting the heavyweight champion of the world, who, by the way, was woeful. He still, in my opinion, he still won the fight, but he was terrible. He was out of shape physically. He just looked awful. You've seen the fight. You know how bad he looked. Mentally, he wasn't on it. He seemed to think he was going to turn up, slap Ngannou around a little bit, and Bob's your uncle. I paved the way to the Usyk fight. Didn't happen. Ngannou, split decision loser. Some people think he won, which is fair enough. If you have a different opinion, that's a video for another time. But Ngannou made his name in defeat. So he is currently 0-1 as a professional boxer, having fought Tyson Fury, and now he's taking on Joshua. The question, of course, is does he have a chance of winning? Well, of course, a man of that size, strength, who does hit hard, has a chance of beating anyone. When you hit Fury cleanly, he'll go on the floor, but he always gets up. He seems to have great recuperative powers. When you hit Joshua cleanly, he gets up, but his recuperative powers are not on a par with Fury's. Fury's are much better. And Joshua will take rounds to recover, like against Vladimir Klitschko. He took a few rounds to recover. We're also talking about, the Ruiz fight, the first one where he kept getting up but just couldn't seem to regain the strength in his legs, the balance. He was completely knocked out of his game plan. It's feasible that Ngannou can beat Fury, can beat Joshua, can knock him out. It's quite possible. You just a guy that size, who's that powerful, who's that physically intimidating and strong. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is called boxing and not fighting. And in my opinion, if Joshua has that little bit of spite and nastiness, which he appears to have regained over the last 6 months, say, and if he boxes sensibly, power boxes, or box fights, if that's what you want to call it, he can box on the back foot, that's fine. But Ngannou's going to come at him if he can counter, if he can land combinations, if he can vary his work, body to head, head to body. Ngannou's not going to be remotely difficult to find. You're going to have to watch your step, because Ngannou was jabbing against Fury and was able to cut the distance remarkably quickly, and even did one of those flying punches, what they call them, when you literally take off. Like in the last round, he tried that against Fury. If you can be on it with regard to the intangibles, those sort of odd things that guys who are not that experienced at boxing do, the unpredictable, unconventional stuff. If you keep your eye on that and then stick to your own game plan, I don't see Joshua having any problems with Ngannou. And my prediction will be that Ngannou early on will be dangerous, but I see Joshua outboxing him after 3 rounds, taking over. Combinations, he might box a little bit conservatively at times, but he won't be not throwing punches. I can see him busting up Ngannou with the jab. Then he'll start to get a bit more varied, a bit less conservative, and a bit more cavalier, round 6. And he'll start to let his hands really go. And I can see him stopping Ngannou in about 8 rounds. Ngannou will be on his feet. Will he hit the floor? Maybe. But I'm going to go with a prediction that Ngannou gets stopped on his feet in 8 rounds, or possibly the corner pull him out. But I think he'll just take too much punishment from Joshua. Is it possible that Ngannou can win? I repeat, of course it is. A man of that side, he could catch Joshua. You just don't know. But you can't really make prediction videos with any kind of logical reason on a guy just getting clipped. Yeah, that can happen in any fight. So if Joshua does, like I say, what he's supposed to do, and listens to Davison in the corner and works it all out and sticks to his game plan, and has a bit of defensive nous early on, first 3 or 4 rounds, then I see him just busting up Ngannou and stopping him. Like I say, I'm going to go for the 8th round. But what do you think? What's your prediction? Leave your comments below. If you're new to this channel, you can subscribe. That would be great too. Hit that subscribe button. Oh, and the like button as well. Really appreciate your time. Looking forward to this one. Isn't it strange? A guy with a 0-1 record fighting Joshua, and we're looking forward to it. But when Ngannou did that with Fury, he went up, way up in my esteem. I didn't really know much about the guy, but got a lot of time for Francis Ngannou. But I just don't see him winning this fight, to be honest with you. But let me know what you think. Comments below, and I'm going away for the week, but I'll be back in time to watch the fight, and I'll do a review of it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, and bye for now.